Let's try one of these. Long division, this time with polynomials. We've got x squared plus 2x plus 9 divided by x plus 3. Let's set this up. Okay, now follow the steps. Step number 1. What do you multiply the outside number by to get as close as possible to the inside number? Okay, now remember we broke those other ones down into little baby pieces, and we're going to have to do the same thing here. Look at the first term on the outside and look at the first term on the inside. Break it down into baby pieces. What do you multiply times x to get as close as possible to x squared? Well, I know that x times x is x squared. So x times x is x squared. I'm going to write an x up top. Now, switching colors here, step 2. We're going to multiply around just like we did with the regular division problems. The only difference is I have a little bit more to multiply. I know that x times x is x squared. And I know that x times 3 is 3x. Now, once you're done with step 2, now move on to. So we're going to subtract all of this stuff. X squared minus x squared, that cancels out. 2x minus 3x. 2 minus 3 is negative 1. So this is going to be negative x. And then step number 4, we're going to drop that next digit and start this whole thing over again. So let me go back to my red pen. And again, I'm going to look at the first term on the outside, and I'm going to look at the first term on the inside, and I want to know what can I multiply by x to get as close as possible to negative x. Well, I would just multiply by negative 1. Because I know that negative 1 times x is negative x. So once you have that number written up top, now you're going to multiply around. So you're going to have negative 1 times x is negative x, and you're going to have negative 1 times 3, which is negative 3. Once you're done with step 2, now we're going to subtract. Well, anything minus itself cancels out, so negative x minus negative x goes away, and 9 minus negative 3. Remember, 2 negatives make a positive, so if you have 9 minus negative 3, that's going to be a positive 12. Notice that there's nothing left to drop down, so that 12, that's our remainder. Once you get to the remainder, you're done. You're just going to write your final answer. So here, my final answer is going to be x minus 1, and then my remainder is 12 over what I was originally dividing by, so 12 over x plus 3. And that would be my final answer. Let's try 2 more. Let's try another one here. Long division of polynomials. We've got 4x cubed minus 10x squared plus 5x plus 2 divided by 2x squared plus x plus 3. First thing we need to do is set this thing up long division style. 4x cubed minus 10x squared plus 5x plus 2 divided by 2x squared plus x plus 3. Now this one looks a little bit more complicated because we have a lot of terms to work with, but we're going to follow the same process. I want to know how many times the outside number goes into the inside number. There's a lot going on here, so we want to break it down into small pieces. I'm going to look at the first term on the outside, and I'm going to look at the first term on the inside. Now I want to know how many times does 2x squared go into 4x cubed. Basically, what can I multiply times 2x squared to get as close as possible to 4x cubed? Well, I know 2 times 2 is 4, And if I have x squared on the outside, I would need to multiply by another x to end up with that x cubed on the inside. So I'm going to put a 2x up top. Now once you've got that number up top, you're going to multiply it around. Make sure that you distribute to every term on the outside. So 2x times 2x squared is 4x cubed. 2x times x is 2x squared. And 2x times 3 is 6x. Now you're on step 3. Step 3, we're going to subtract this stuff. So here we go. 4 minus 4 is 0. The x cubes go away. Looking at the x squared, we've got negative 10 minus 2. It's going to be negative 12x squared. For the x's, I've got 5x minus 6x. 5 minus 6 is negative 1, so it's going to be negative x. And then we bring down that next term and start the whole process over again. So again, start with that first term on the outside and the first term here. Now I want to know how many times does 2x squared go into negative 12x squared? Basically, what can you multiply times 2x squared to get as close as possible to negative 12x squared? Well, I know that 2 times negative 6 gives me negative 12, and we already have the x squared, so we don't need anything else. So just a negative 6 up on the top. From here, we're going to multiply around, so this is going to be negative 6 times 2x squared is negative 12x squared. Negative 6 times x is negative 6x. And negative 6 times 3 is negative 18. Step 3, we subtract. And we're left with negative 12 minus negative 12 is 0. This would be negative 1 minus negative 6, which would be like negative 1 plus 6. That's 5x. And 2 minus negative 18 would be like 2 plus 18, which is a positive 20. There's nothing left to drop down, so I'm going to put an R here for remainder. We can write our final answer. Our final answer is going to be 2x minus 6 with a remainder of 5x plus 20. And that remainder is always over whatever it is you were dividing by in the first place. So over 2x squared plus x plus 3. And that's your final answer. Let's try one more just to consolidate this process and really get it down. We've got x cubed minus 5x plus 11 divided by x minus 2. So let's set this thing up long division style. We've got x minus 2 on the outside, and then on the inside this is going to be really important. Notice we have an x cubed, but there's no x squared. We're going to have to put a placeholder for that so that we can keep everything lined up as we go. So this is going to be x cubed plus 0 x squared minus 5x plus 11. So again, that 0x squared is really important. All right, so start with step number 1. What do we multiply the outside number by to get as close as possible to the? So take a look at the x and the x cubed. What can you multiply times x to get as close as possible to x cubed? Well, I know x times x squared gives me x cubed, so I'm going to put an x squared up top. Step 2, multiply around. So we're going to distribute this thing around. X squared times x is x cubed. X squared times negative 2 is negative 2x squared. Step 3, subtract. X cubed minus x cubed is 0. And I know that 0 minus negative 2 would be like 0 plus 2. It's 2x squared. And I've got some stuff down here to drop down. I'm going to drop down the minus 5x, and I'm going to drop down the plus 11. Now we're going to start this whole thing over again. So take a look at that first x out there, and now we're working with 2x squared. What can you multiply times x to get as close as possible to 2x squared? Well, I would need to multiply by a 2, and I would need to multiply by an x. So I'm going to put a 2x up top. Next, I'm going to distribute around. I'm going to multiply 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times negative 2 is negative 4x. And moving along to step 3, now we're going to subtract. 2 minus 2 is 0. Negative 5 minus negative 4 would be like negative 5 plus 4, which is negative 1x. And we still have that 11. We're going to bring down the 11, and we're going to start this whole thing all over again. So again, I'm going to look at that x in the front, and I'm going to look at this negative x here. If I have x, what can I multiply by to end up with negative x? I would just multiply by negative 1. So I'm going to put a negative 1 up top. Step 2, I'm going to multiply around. So negative 1 times x is negative 1x. Negative 1 times negative 2 is positive 2. Step 3, now so we're going to subtract here. Negative x minus negative x is 0 because anything minus itself is 0. And 11 minus 2 is 9. There's nothing left to bring down. That means we're finished. This 9 is our remainder. So to write our final answer, our quotient is x squared plus 2x minus 1 with a remainder of 9 over x minus 2.